Good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to the afternoon session today. And again, many thanks to everybody for attending on a Saturday. We very much appreciate that. On behalf of Boehringer Ingelheim and Eli Lilly, we would like to welcome you to the afternoon session of this very exciting event. Now, again, we have three different audiences. Firstly, we have where the speakers are, our site in Sydney. Then we have multiple venues across Australia, also face-to-face. And then lastly, we have online for the webinar version, both Australian GPs, and also we're very excited to have join us this afternoon, multiple other countries across the Asian region. So we have all of our colleagues from the Asian region who have joined online. So I'm sure we'll hear from them in question time. So as far as questions goes and for polling, on the screen right now, regardless of what venue you're at and what location you're at, is the QR code that we'll be using for our questions and polling. So for those of you in Sydney, please don't use the QR code on your table. And for everyone, wherever you are, please just use the QR code that's on your screen now. And just scan that. I'll just give you a few seconds to scan that. So again, if everyone, whichever audience you're at, if you just scan the QR code that's on your screen now. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Anita Sharma. Anita is a GP based in Brisbane in Australia, in Queensland. And Anita is, from an Australian perspective, is a GP that is part of the Diabetes Special Interest Group with the Royal Australian College of GPs in Australia. So welcome to Anita.
Thank you. You must be wondering, it's like deja vu all over again, but we're doing this for the benefit of people who've just joined us online or who've come this afternoon. So welcome to everyone here and online. So we have, again, I'm going to introduce our speakers for the benefit of people who weren't here this morning. We have a really fantastic lineup of very distinguished, eminent physicians today who are going to talk to us about different topics relating to heart failure, kidney disease, and diabetes. So I'll start with Professor Andrew Coates, who is a very eminent cardiologist, who is the immediate past president of the Heart Failure Association of the European Society of Cardiology. He is also the director of the Monash-Warwick Alliance and academic vice president of Monash and Warwick Universities. Welcome, Professor Coates. We have also today, all the way from the UK, Dr. Janaka Kairaledi, who's a very renowned physician in the UK and does a lot of, I think, global work. He is a clinical reader in diabetes and cardiovascular disease in the School of Cardiovascular Medicine Sciences at King's College London and consultant physician in diabetes and endocrinology and internal medicine at St. Guy's and St. Thomas Hospitals, London. We've got Associate Professor Bobby Chaco, who is a very distinguished renal physician, and he's the director of the Renal Services and Senior Staff Specialist, Nephrology and Transplantation at John Hunter Hospital in Newcastle. And then we've got Dr. Ted Wu, who is one of the very well-known educators here in Australia, very active in involvement of both GP and advanced trainees. He's a senior specialist endocrinologist and director of physician training at the Royal Prince Alfred Hospital in Sydney, Australia. So welcome to all of you today. So we are, I guess, now going to move on to the afternoon session, and we're going to talk about the burden of cardiorenal conditions in type 2 diabetes. Over to you, Dr. Janaka.
So thank you very much, Anita, and if I can get my slides up. So it's a great pleasure to speak to you all today, and I'm going to focus about cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, and diabetes, and the interconnectivity that we all heard about this morning, and why it's so important in a practical sense of identifying people early who share these common comorbidities, but also intervening promptly with evidence-based, guideline-based treatments. These are my disclosures. So I'll start with a picture of where I work, but about 500 years ago. This is Guy's Hospital. It was started to look after the poor of people of London who could not afford healthcare at that time, which was the privilege of the wealthy, until we had the formation of the NHS after the Second World War. So the hospital has changed over time. I often wish I work. There are two buildings. I work in the more Soviet-style building that you can see on the right, but the Shard and the Shangri-La Hotel is right next door to us, owned by the government of Qatar, with a five-star hotel at the top. And I do clinics in the less elegant building to the side of it, looking after people with diabetes and kidney disease and cardiovascular disease. 3 to 4 clinics with a large proportion of patients with more advanced complications, generally with stage 4 or 5 CKD, with heart failure, and progression towards kidney disease, unfortunately very common. So on a good day, I also work on a good day. There's a picture to work across the South Bank. That's Big Ben. And I work at St. Thomas's, again, focusing on heart failure and diabetes clinics, which we work together. But something that we're really focused on is, even though central London may appear prosperous and glamorous, where we work in South London has a huge amount of deprivation. So the boroughs that I look after in South London are in the top 10 most deprived boroughs in terms of economic indices and a life expectancy that is 5 to 10 years lower than the national average. And more than half my patients are of non-Caucasian origin. And we have a high-risk population, early onset type 2 diabetes, very aggressive kidney disease, very aggressive cardiovascular disease. And what we've done in the last 5 years is deliver community-based complication services where the hospital team goes to primary care, but also actively searches through GP databases, which we are fortunate to do because we have shared electronic health records, one of the a few good things about the NHS, but we have shared IT, and we're able to access and identify high-risk people to triage at the level of primary care, and then inform and guide our primary care colleagues. And the clinics we run are multidisciplinary, with a GP, with special interest in diabetes and heart failure, and we have renal trained dialysis and diabetes nurses, a heart failure diabetes pharmacist, and other associated healthcare professionals who really guide a multidisciplinary service based in community centers across South London. And why do we do it? And I guess this is a picture that I often love to show, and I think is really important, and this is about doing simple things well. This is a picture of an elegant physician from the Canterbury Tales, useful school-based reading for those in secondary school. And if you were an elegant physician 600 years ago who had patients queuing up to see you in your private practice, you needed to have 3 key ingredients. You needed to have a beautiful horse, clearly, a beautiful gown, but most importantly, you had what's called an accoutrement, which is another word for a fashion accessory. It's the equivalent of your Gucci or your Versace bag, but it's a leather flask looking at urine. And urine analysis gives you a picture. It's a window into your body, not only acute disease, but chronic disease. And the importance of urine analysis was appreciated hundreds and hundreds of years ago, even before this, and highlights what we should be doing much, much better. So how are we doing 600 years later? The reality, this is data from the US, and it's sadly replicated across the world, is we are not doing the basics well. Less than 50% of our patients with diabetes get an annual urine ACR test done. And we are diagnosing chronic kidney disease, sadly, when we have lost 50 to 60% of kidney function. And the reality is that early identification of albumin in the urine is still a very important biomarker to predict not only kidney disease, but also cardiovascular disease, and something we should do so much better. And what we know in terms of chronic kidney disease, as you can see here, in terms of the stages of kidney disease, it's the GFR, which is an estimate of GFR from serum creatinine and albuminuria. And you have this heat map. As your GFR declines and your albuminuria goes up, you not only have elevated renal risk in terms of progression to kidney disease, but you have massively elevated cardiovascular disease as well as heart failure. My heart failure colleagues have more recently started testing urine albumin patient. And something we have our colleagues diagnose someone